Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to talk NCAA basketball tournament action on Friday involving the Southeastern Conference. Blake, let's start in the Midwest Regional. Auburn, the 2 seed in that regional, facing Jacksonville State, which also is in the state of Alabama. This game in Greenville, South Carolina, 11 a.m. Central on Friday. You can see it on True TV. Ken Pomeroy has Auburn winning this one. What was it, 77-64 with a 91% chance of victory. Auburn's NCAA tournament has already gotten off to a little bit of a rocky start before it's even gotten there. Auburn had some trouble with planes last night. I think had to fly 2 separate planes. Anyway, probably not a big deal, but got some discussion last night. What else has gotten some discussion? Auburn's guard play of late. And I think in that we have lost the bigger picture that Auburn really was an outstanding team this year with 2 big men, played hard every night, accomplished a lot, and I think poised to make a good run in this tournament given where it is seated and who is in its side of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, let's just quickly on the Jacksonville State front. I mean, we said it. That's a team that very well coached. Ray Harper knows what he's doing, and I think he'll certainly try to do some things to make everything Auburn does come from the 3-point line. Like that's exactly going to be their formula for trying to beat Auburn. Because as we said, the one thing for Auburn, and I think we pointed out the stat that they put it up on every game it seemed like Auburn played this year, was the teams that have won the national championship have all shot, I think it's like 36 point something % or better from 3 over the past however many years. Auburn shoots 32.1% from 3. And, we're used to that being the opposite, where they are such a good shooting team that, they could beat you in a lot of different ways. This year, they can hit the threes, but it's not as consistent, of course. So I think that's the thing here. And remember, what did we say on the flip side of that? Was that Jacksonville State shoots a lot of them, a lot of threes, and they have been efficient in making those, 38.2%. That's top 10 in the country from the 3-point line. So if you're looking for doomsday scenario for Auburn, it's Jacksonville State getting hot from 3 and just lighting it up, and Auburn being forced to take a lot of outside shots and not lighting it up. That's, I think, really the only path here for this. I say all that to say this. To me, there are still very few teams in this tournament. And I've been, by the way, if you're looking for, and at this point, it's a little late, but it still would be very helpful for you. If you're looking for something that is just a tremendous resource, there are so many out there. VEASAN, Brent Musburger's, thing out in Vegas, they have a tremendous resource for the tournament where they just dissect every single team in the bracket. And one thing they pointed out about Auburn, which I think is the best thing to say, and it's something we've said before, there are still very few teams in this tournament, the entire tournament, that have the ceiling that Auburn has just because of what they have on the floor. So that's why I think everyone's kind of quick to point out some of the flaws with Auburn in terms of, okay, perhaps we said it and we know what it is. I mean, not making shots from outside, guard play has been up and down, those kind of things. And again, we understand all those things. If you look at, I put Eric Haslam, who does a tremendous job with his metrics and data. If you look at kind of where Auburn ranks in terms of momentum right now, of the 6 teams in the SEC that are in the tournament, they are 338th nationally in momentum when you measure their last 4 to 8 performances. So this is the data that goes into it versus their overall season performance. They're 338th in momentum. They are 336th in away from home rankings, which means a measure of teams away/neutral game performances versus its overall season performance. I know we're getting into the weeds here, but these are the things you look at. However, Chris, these are a couple things that I look at as well. Record quality. Auburn is 3rd nationally, meaning that they earned this 27-5 record, right? I mean, it's not just something that happened by accident. They earned a 27-5 record, and which may seem to not be the case, but when you really look at it, and I think Eric, again, Haslametrics, another great resource, really breaks it down in terms of consistency throughout the season. meaning, certain things you can do, just kind of being very consistent overall. Even if you've had your ups and downs, it's still kind of a consistency metric. Auburn is sixth nationally in consistency. And he said when he's looked back at some of the teams that have won it over the years, that's one of those things that he said a lot of those teams have been ranked very highly in consistency. So there's a lot, I think, in Auburn's favor here. And I know we're just talking about one game, but I think so many people are being so quick to kind of write off Auburn because of losing a game in the SEC tournament or losing a couple of those games down the stretch. But again, I know that was long-winded, but I think it's important to point these kind of different metrics and data out because Auburn has kind of been one of the more scrutinized teams, I feel like, for a number two seed. But a lot of the data still points to this is a team that can get to the Final Four. So,
Well, a couple things. There's a difference between playing poorly, which Auburn did not play poorly at any point of the season, or not playing up to a level at which Auburn played, which was at the top of its ceiling and almost impossible to sustain for anybody. So Auburn did itself a little bit of a disservice by the way it played for 3 months straight because it raised expectations, and then it put that team under a microscope to which most teams can't live up to. So there's that. Number two, I did take a look at the bracket and especially the 8-team segment that Auburn is in. I think it's the weakest in the field. We did our live show last night. I picked Auburn to go to the Final Four, which I really wasn't expecting to do going into it until I looked at it. Am I super confident in it? No. I would say that for all four of the teams that I picked to the Final Four, though. Let's back out of Auburn's big picture for a minute, though, and talk a little bit more quickly about Jacksonville State. You mentioned how well it shoots it. It is 25th nationally in effective field goal percentage. It was 10th, as you said, in three-point percentage at 38.2%. Now, here's the thing that scares me about teams that shoot the three well. It's where does it come from, right? In other words, is it one or two guys who just shoot off the charts? Because with the right matchup, especially if you're a mid-major, you're not going to see the athletes that a team like Auburn can throw at you. But they've got three kids in Darian Adams, who's 39% from three, Damari King, who's 48%, and Jalen Gibbs, who's 40%. So if you're closing out on one guy, he can flip it to the other guy, and they can hit a lot of shots that way. Now, oddly enough, they're a poor free throw shooting team, 68%. I don't know how you make sense of that, the way they shoot threes, but no secret, if Jacksonville State wins, it's going to be because the threes went the Gamecocks' way and not Auburn's.
right. And I think it's as simple as that. I don't really see another path other than Auburn getting complacent and taking a lot of threes and not making them versus Jacksonville State taking their usual batch, which is quite a few, and making them. I think that's the best way to put it. And look, this is something we could say about all the other SEC teams too. I'm going to point this out real quick. I think what to think about too when teams like, and we're not just talking about Auburn here. Well, you can apply this to Alabama and LSU and the other teams we talked about on Thursday. I think sometimes we have to remember that in the NCAA tournament, you're not necessarily just playing SEC teams. And think about how good the SEC was as a conference this year. So, if you lose games in one of the toughest conferences in the country, I think that's something too to really think about in this tournament. And I think this is where we're going to see how good was the SEC because you know what I mean? It's just, well, I think sometimes like, oh, well, they lost a game. Well, yeah, they lost a game in one of the toughest, if not the toughest conference in the country. So you're not playing those teams every single round. Now, as we said, Auburn and LSU could play each other in the Sweet 16, but I think you have to keep that in mind too. The LSU, I mean, the SEC really tested all of these teams. And so I think that's something that could be in the benefit of everyone of the six teams in the field. So
Auburn to win, I don't think there's a lot of ambiguity with either of us
no.
on that. Does Auburn cover what is, I don't know, 13-ish? I don't know what the line is right now.
If it's 13, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. But yeah, I think that's again, to me, it's just I don't think Jacksonville State can match up outside of just the 3-point shot. So we'll see.
March is here. The madness has officially begun. It's time for you to shoot your shot And score big on the nonstop action with MyBookie. Predict winners in each round of the MyBookie bracket contest for a chance to win a Bitcoin, a Doodle NFT, currently valued at over $50,000 and over $100,000 more in cash prizes. Whether you are filling out multiple brackets, betting the national championship winner, or simply looking for player and game props, MyBookie has you covered. Sign up today. Excuse me. Sign up today with MyBookie. Use promo code Southeastern. Make your first deposit. Earn a free entry into the My Bracket contest. Selections for the bracket officially begin March 13th, close March 17th at noon. So make sure you get your deposit in now with promo code Southeastern to secure that free entry. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Did
Just
you
real
find
quickly,
a line on that?
Yeah, 14.5. So
yeah,
I'll take Auburn, 14.5.
Pardon me for just a moment. Great podcasting there, but I'd rather take a sip than cough at everyone. Okay. West Regional, Alabama now knows its opponent. It's Notre Dame, which beat Rutgers in Dayton in double overtime. On Wednesday night, this game in San Diego, 3:15 Central on Friday. Ken Pom has Alabama winning this one 78-76. Gives Alabama a 59% chance to win. This is a matchup of very offensive-oriented teams, to say the least. Notre Dame does the thing that really scares you. It can shoot a lot of threes. We have talked about Alabama's hot and coldness from three-point land, its inability to defend. But like Auburn, Alabama has been put under a microscope all year. It has played a brutal schedule, and wrinkles, flaws, and all, Alabama still had a nice season, beat a lot of good teams, and I'm still favoring Alabama against Notre Dame, although I think this one will be a lot of fun to watch and probably close too.
Well, if you're Alabama, you got almost the best case scenario you could have on Wednesday night. Game goes in double overtime. I mean, it was just a tough, grinded out game for those two teams. Notre Dame wins as the clock strikes St. Patrick's Day. And as I said on Twitter, the biggest thing Rutgers did, the biggest problem, is that they let this game get to St. Patrick's Day. If they'd have kept it on March the 16th, Rutgers would probably be advancing, but they did not. So, sorry. The luck of the Irish strikes. And, yeah, I mean, the thing about this game is, and it was funny because I saw a lot of opinions swing throughout the game back and forth from Alabama fans in terms of which team they wanted here. I think by the end of it, they thought they wanted Rutgers instead of Notre Dame, whereas it was flipped before. I still think it's a nice matchup for Alabama. I just think this is a Notre Dame team that, statistically, quite honestly, statistically, I know their offensive numbers are good. And that, I think if you're Alabama, right, with the way Alabama plays defense, sometimes that can worry you a little bit because I think Notre Dame could sort of just methodically dissect them a bit in terms of how Notre Dame runs their offense. And again, this is another one of those teams too. I always like these kind of teams. And I know we had our talk about maybe Notre Dame shouldn't have been in, but it's one of those things where, okay, that was a different discussion than, okay,
Yeah.
Now we're at the point where they've won a game and you have to at least look at it and say, okay, well, now we have to start looking at what are the things they could do to perhaps win this game. And what I love about teams, that can win in March is the teams that do not beat themselves. And Notre Dame had 5 turnovers against Rutgers last night in a double overtime. Think about that. 5 turnovers in a double overtime game against a Rutgers team that doesn't force a lot of turnovers. But when you think about the physicality with how Rutgers plays, to me, that's still impressive to only turn it over 5 times in a double overtime game. So that is one of those things that I think this matchup probably was. It looked a little better on paper, but I think maybe after you watch Notre Dame play, if you're Alabama, you start to get a little maybe, okay, this is clearly a team that has some rhythm now, and they find a way to win this game. But the thing about, it's a team that pretty much plays 6 guys, Notre Dame.
7,
we saw that
but I mean, and it's literally
yeah.
7. The eighth guy has played 22 minutes on the season. So,
well, yeah, but I think you have to. 6 guys last night played more than 34 minutes or more.
yeah.
So, Wirtz came off the bench and had like 14, which it's fine, but I still think you're basically looking at a very limited rotation here. So I think for Alabama, that's where getting up and down the floor, making this a very fast-paced game, I think that will benefit them here. And look, Notre Dame too, and the reason why I think a lot of Alabama fans looked at Notre Dame as the better matchup is what? Notre Dame does not really force a lot of turnovers. I know
Yeah.
Rutgers turned it over 13 times last night, but there were a couple of those I thought were just Rutgers turnovers and not necessarily Notre Dame turnovers. So that I think is good for an Alabama team that has been careless with the ball at times. So I think it sets up well for Alabama in terms of the logistical things too of a team playing a double overtime game, traveling cross country now to get ready for this next one, which is basically an early afternoon game. I just think it sets up nicely for Alabama. But as we always say, the one team in the SEC this year that was, well, maybe I was going to say outside of Georgia, but then again, nope, because Georgia beat Alabama. Um, the one team you just could never, you could preview the game in every different way you wanted, but you just never know what you're going to get, and that is Alabama. And so, I mean, that's all I can say. I can tell you everything else, but I mean, that's just we know what Alabama is. As I said, if you don't know what Alabama is after 32 games, then I don't know what to tell you. This is what Alabama is, and you could get a variety of outcomes with this team on Friday.
Yeah, the travel thing is interesting to me because it gets negated some. There's been some studies done on effective performance after long flights. I know even in the NFL it affects things, and those are supremely conditioned athletes, and that's their job, whereas these guys are kids going to school and other things too. I guess it gets somewhat negated by the fact that Alabama has a long flight too, but Alabama is going to get out there sooner, have more time to get used
And
to
they didn't
it,
play a double overtime
and
game
didn't play a
last night.
double overtime game. I don't know when Notre Dame's flight is, but I mean, in a game where it's probably going to be a 2-3 point game with the line, that may be something you consider.
Absolutely, I think you do. And again, I thought going into it that Notre Dame was a better matchup. The line's 4 right now, somewhere in there, 3.5 or 4. Um, I think that'll I think that'll move towards Notre Dame, but um, I think it's just because again the volatility you get with Alabama. So, and I think it goes back to it's what we always say. I mean, Alabama is a team that's the 3-pointer is going to depend on a lot, right? Like that's going to be what I think this game comes down to. They're going to take 30 something threes, and it's really just a matter of are they hitting those? I mean, we say that look, it's still a team that's coming into this losing 3 in a row. So, I mean, it's not like Alabama's just been great, really. I mean, even like down the stretch, they won some close games and those kind of things, but I I think the wide range in terms of their 3-point shooting makes this an impossible game to predict. I'm going to pick Alabama, but I just don't look. We've said this for a month or more now. You're never going to feel fully confident about it with this team, and I think they did get a decent enough draw here with a team that doesn't force a ton of turnovers to where they've just got to take care of the ball and they've just got to defend, well. And those have been two issues. If they can do those two things, at least, a little above average perhaps, I think they win this game. But if not, it's the same thing we talked about all year, and they could absolutely lose this game. But I think at least on paper it sets up a bit nicer than I would have expected.
Okay, I'm going to throw something at you. First of all, I want to mention this, and I want to go a different direction. Notre Dame has 4 guys who play a lot of minutes who shoot 37% or better from 3, including 2 that are over 45 and shoot it a lot. So, again, that always scares the pants off me. I don't care. You're for Gonzaga. That's the recipe for a potential upset. But, okay, Blake, in 1 or 2 sentences, sum up what Alabama likes to do offensively.
I mean, they like to get up and down the floor and shoot threes.
Or,
get to the rim.
yes, that's what I was getting at. Alabama is 8th in the country at 2-point percentage. Guess who's 197th at defending the two? Notre Dame.
Rutgers.
Notre
Just
Dame.
kidding.
Sorry. Guess who was 347th in block percentage? Notre Dame. Guess who is 304th in steal percentage? Notre Dame. So what that tells me, Alabama can get to the rim without fear of getting it blocked and convert. And I will bet you that with Alabama's guards, that's going to be the plan. I mean, not that that's a revelation. I'm just pointing it out as I look at things and knowing where Alabama struggles. They do have that more than a little bit in their back pocket, and that's an area where it would appear on paper. Plus, here's another thing. I don't think the ACC had the athletes that the SEC had this year. Would you agree with that? I mean, I know the ACC is not chopped liver, but I don't know that night in, night out Notre Dame face guys with Alabama's athleticism.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that would be Alabama, that absolutely should be the game plan, but this is still a team to me that will always revert to taking the three over driving. Even as good as their percentage is, they still get a lot of their points either from three or they do drive and get to the free throw line. And we've said I think the free throw part is going to be interesting to me because as we talked about, like the SEC had a lot of teams in the top 100 in terms of free throw attempts this year, and I assume Alabama's probably among that group. Do you get the calls? And I think that's going to be because look, here's how games play out like that. If you're not getting the calls early, if you go inside, if you try to attack the rim, you're not getting the calls, then what do you do? Then I think you just really start to push it back out even more. You keep pushing further out to where you just start to settle in for all the threes because you think you're not going to get a call inside. So those are the things that I think, and that's a good point. Like how this game plays out stylistically could either be a big advantage for Alabama or it could put Alabama in a position that they don't necessarily want to be in against a team like Notre Dame. So close game. It's going to be a close game, but I think I'm going to lean towards Alabama.
Yeah, I am too. Okay, wager on sports and win NFTs without risking any money. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it's not with Stakes. Stakes, Stakes, is the wagering app that's casual, social, and made for all sports fans. Whether it is by yourself or with friends, experience the thrill of sports betting without needing to worry about losing your hard-earned money. Sign up, use our code Southeastern14 to join the thousands of other sports fans playing with Stakes. We're on there. We're going to put up some polls this morning. We'll maybe do some prop bets during the game. It's just a lot of fun. You sign up, you get this free account with tokens, and you can bet them any way you want. You can create your own polls. Really is a lot of fun. And again, stuff gets created in games, so you can follow along. And follow us at Southeastern 14 there as we create stuff. And just join us for some fun there. Okay, the last game involving SEC teams in the opening round would be LSU at Iowa State. That game in Milwaukee, 6:20 Central on Friday night. Ken Pom has this LSU 64-61 with LSU a 61% chance of winning. Two very defensive-minded teams. We'll get to that part in a minute. But the big story, of course, this one, the off-court stuff has eclipsed the on-court matters. Kevin Nickelberry is the LSU coach because Will Wade has been fired. Nickelberry coached at Hampton and Howard for a combined 12 seasons through 2019. And boy, it's just anybody's guess how this affects LSU, which I think we both consider to be the better team.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, I got LSU in my Sweet 16. So I just think it's a nice matchup against an Iowa State team that is not good offensively. And like I said, you can say the same about LSU too, but I still think LSU is a better offensive team than Iowa State. So that would, if I'm an Iowa State fan, that would worry me because I think if LSU comes out and plays anywhere close to what they've played this season, and they don't just come out look like everything's affected them off the court, then I think LSU takes care of business here because this Iowa State team, and like you said, you can make the same case here and say, well, Iowa State's been bad offensively against a really good, defensive conference like the Big 12, but I see a below average offensive team when I see one, and that is Iowa State. So, yeah, I think this is a favorable matchup for LSU because, again, to me, it would have been one if you would have just got a high-powered, juggernaut of an offensive team. Then I think, we always talk about offense versus defense and those kind of scenarios, great offense versus great defense. But I think this is exactly what LSU wanted, to play a team that's kind of very similar to them and yet worse on the offensive end. So, but if everything had stayed the same and Will Wade was still in place and there was no distractions off the court, I may even go as far to say that LSU wins this game by double digits. But right now, I don't know if I can say that because I don't know what the mindset's going to be and those kind of things. So, but I'll just be honest with you. I think this is still a great matchup on paper for LSU. I think they could turn Iowa State over 100 times. I mean, probably not 100, but a lot. Like they could turn Iowa State over a lot in this game. But on the flip side, as I've said all season, LSU again is an average offensive team. And I think that's something that could hurt them in this game because Iowa State's a good defensive team. As we said, this is, and everybody's kind of said it. It's as though like Iowa State is kind of a lesser version of LSU at times. Like that's kind of the way they play. So yeah, I don't. This is one that I've really not thought twice about. But the only reason I would think twice about it is if you just get LSU that's clearly unmotivated, clearly not in there from a mental standpoint, and just comes out flat and can't get anything going. But if they play their game, I think LSU wins this game, and I don't have a lot of hesitations in saying that.
You're going to pull out the R word for this one.
I mean, it could be. Like I said, I told someone yesterday, it could be first to 60 wins this game. It may be first to 55. So, yeah, I mean, this is a rock fight defined right here without question. So I just think you look at and look, I mean, I just think LSU, as I said, I mean, they are a 6 seed, but at full strength, to me, sometimes they look like a top 4 seed. And I
Mm-hmm.
think had they been at full strength all season long, they probably would be a top 4 seed right now. So and look, they've got everyone back. And I know, they didn't play well against Arkansas, but I think sometimes we overvalue conference. I mean, and look, we've had this discussion in terms of just a one game conference tournament. One game, I think we just boy we can run with that sometimes, and I think it's sometimes just okay. That's one game. And so for the most part, though, this team has played a lot better since they've gotten Xavier Pinson back, and I just think it sets up nicely for them.
Well, two things. LSU shoots foul shots better, 73 to 68%. So if it is close, LSU's got a small edge there. And the other thing, we just have really loved Tari Eason. Now, if he gets in foul trouble, which does happen, that could be some trouble for LSU. But you're looking for guys who can carry you in games like this, and he is certainly capable of doing that. By the way, Darius Days is too. Days could get 25, and if he does that, the likelihood that LSU loses. But when you look at tournaments and having superstars who can carry you, LSU certainly got one and maybe two of those.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and look, guard play is going to be important, and even with Pinson back, there's still, as I said, offensively, there can still be some wild sequences there offensively for them. But I think if they just play an average offensive game and they play their usual defensive game, I think they will be able to score enough points to beat Iowa State. But this is an interesting one because again, this is not going to be one that you're circling like a potential Iowa South Dakota State second round game in this bracket. This is going to be the opposite of that. I mean, I think it's going to be an absolute grind trying to find points for both these teams, and yeah, so we'll see how it unfolds. But I just think LSU is a team that, again, I would not, if I'm betting on this game, there's no way I could feel confident about it just because I don't know what I'm going to get from LSU. But if I just look at it from a basketball standpoint, I'm trying to make a pick. I still see LSU as I don't say significantly better team, but I think there are a lot of things they could do to really cause some issues for Iowa State in this one.
Okay, Blake. Parting thoughts, and also tell people about our partnership with Action 24/7.
action 24/7. Description below. You can click on that link, use code South14, and sign up first deposit. They will match up to $800. If you want to bet on all these games, you can do that there. And I will leave it with this, Chris. The legendary, I brought up Visa a minute ago, Brent Musburger. The legendary Brent Musburger has 4 SEC teams in his Elite 8.
I think I do too.
He does not. I don't know if you.
No, wait, I had 3. I had 3.
Yeah. That means.
He's got does he have Arkansas upsetting Gonzaga?
No. He has Alabama.
Ooh, goodness.
He has Alabama, Gonzaga, Kentucky, Baylor, Tennessee, Arizona, Auburn, Kansas. And he only has Kentucky advancing to the Final Four, but I thought that was noteworthy.
So he's got Alabama ending Coach K's run?
Yes, he does.
No kidding.
There you go. What about that, huh?
Well, that would be fun to watch.
Brent Musburger, our man in the desert.
That's right. Okay. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We got a lot more content coming up. We started our baseball coverage for this week. Got a video up on that. So if you like baseball, be sure to watch that. We'll have a lot of stuff coming through the tournament. Maybe a couple of live streams. We'll figure that out. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you soon.